Hey there. Welcome to Toy Talk with Mike and Chad, episode 33. I'm Mike.
I'm Chad.
And the toys that we're going to talk about today, I guess it's just going to be another random episode because we didn't plan anything. So yeah, just some general toys that we've got.
A couple G.I. Joe pickups.
Yep. He's got me a couple of G.I. Joes. So you were just in Cape Breton.
Yes. Yeah. I was up there visiting a friend. Actually, the guy that introduced us.
Our friend Elliot.
Our friend Elliot, who actually recently just lost his brother. So shout out to the whole Van Dusen family. Our thoughts are with you guys.
Yeah, that's terrible news.
I was up there about 2 weeks ago, and we were in Walmart looking around for some stuff. He was doing some grocery shopping, and he said, I know you're going to want to go to the toy section, so let's go. So away we went. And I believe in our last episode, we were talking about the G.I. Joe retro cards for the Classified series.
Yeah, so I had just gotten the retro card Storm Shadow last episode, which he's somewhere. And I was saying in that episode that there was a Zartan coming out, and that I would like him if I found him anywhere. But these retro card figures are pretty hard to find in our area. And 2, the Lady Jaye wasn't high on my list of priorities, but I hadn't seen her yet either, so I hadn't bought her. But if I did, maybe I'd pick her up.
So we were looking away in the toy section, and then my jaw dropped. And he was like, what's going on? I said, hang on, I need to make a quick message to Mike. And he's like, oh, what's going on? So we actually found some of them. And at the Walmart in Sydney, there was the Zartan Mike was looking for.
Yeah, so that's pretty cool, because this guy he's brand new. And even if he were to show up in our area, typically we get them like well after everybody online already has them.
Yep.
But yeah, this guy, a lot of people don't have him in hand yet. So yeah, we're getting him pretty early in the process, so that's pretty cool.
And next was the Lady Jaye he was looking for. So I was like, oh, hey, Mike, do you want these guys? And he was like, yes. So I picked them up for him. Well, actually, our buddy Elliot paid for them. And Mike sent me the money that I passed on to Elliot. But also, they had one that I was looking for. So I also got the Zartan because I needed him. Sorry,
that's
blocking
good.
out your face. And I also got the Gung Ho. Now, I didn't get the G.I. Joe Classified Gung Ho that they put out first.
Yeah.
So I was psyched to be able to find this because there was a limited number on the Walmart website when I tried to get one and couldn't find them. So that happened.
Yep.
And the last thing that bothered me about this Walmart trip was they had the carded Destro. And I had to get that shipped in from Phoenix, which ended up costing 76 Canadian.
Yeah.
By the time all was said and done. And there was the carded Destro for $35.99.
Yeah.
It's like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
So it's a little kick in the sack, but
Yeah.
hey.
You definitely overpaid for Destro. I always thought you probably should have just waited a minute.
I had to have him, though.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I'm happy with those two purchases. And
for the retro carded Joes, I've opened up a few of them. Like Gung Ho, for example. This is an awesome figure because the first Gung Ho that they released like in the box, it was a good figure, but it just didn't seem like the Gung Ho we grew up on. They'd changed his colors. They'd given him like a mohawk. He had like a different style, like more of a handlebar mustache. Like, it was reminiscent of Gung Ho, but it wasn't quite Gung Ho.
Didn't scratch the itch.
But yeah, most of these retro cards are just repaints. But this guy here, he's got several new sculpted parts. It's like a brand new head, a new hat. He's got a different tattoo on his chest, different pants or boots or something. Like, he's quite different. And this is like the Gung Ho we remember from when we were kids. So yeah, this is an awesome figure. So I definitely had to open him up because I wanted him in my display. But when it came to the Destro, the Storm Shadow, the Baroness, I've kept them carded just because they were so close to the ones that I already had before. And I'm not sure what I'm going to do with these guys yet. Like Lady Jaye, she's a brighter green than the standard release that I already have. She's got some of her accessories are a little different here. And the one thing that might justify me opening her to have her in my display is the other version came with two alternate, like not two heads, but two hairdos.
Yeah.
You could either put her hair on where she's got her ball cap, which is true to the vintage action figure, or you could have her with her windswept hair, which was how she looked in the cartoon.
Yeah.
So I think the one I have on my display now has the non-hat head.
Right.
So if I open this figure, not only will she be a slightly different color green, but she'll have the two different head sculpts. So I think that makes them different enough to justify her. Zartan, I don't know at a glance, because I don't have my other Zartan handy, how different this guy is. I think this is a better paint job, but I don't know if it's different enough that if I put these together on my shelf that they really make much difference. So I might want to keep him on the card and just... I haven't figured out what I'm going to do with those yet. They're all just kind of sitting in a pile, but eventually I might pin them to my wall somewhere.
Would you consider slicing the bubble and taking the stand out and using the stand for some of the other figures? Or would
Probably not. Like if I want to keep them carded, I want to keep them carded. Although the display stands are handy for the other figures. I don't know. I might open this guy up. Partly just because I'm jonesing to open some new figures.
Yeah, me too.
It's been a little bit of a dry spell.
Yeah.
For buying figures. So yeah, it's just exciting to open something up. So you bought these for me like a week ago. And I've just been kind of waiting anxiously for me to get my new G.I. Joes here.
Yeah, what annoys me though is with the carded ones, like I looked for absolutely the best carded ones that I could find.
Yeah.
And they're all terrible. Like, I think I gave you the better Zartan one because mine was all like wrinkly and warped. Yours is at least only curved at the top. There's also some box damage to mine, so I don't know. I think it's just unfortunate that either Hasbro isn't doing their part in making like smaller packaging, like maybe decreasing it a little bit, or making it a thicker cardstock, or if Walmart just doesn't care and they're like, hey,
they've got to do the thicker cardstock. There's no excuse for this. Like, and we complain every time we talk about one of these figures, which we've done when I bought the Baroness, the Destro, the Storm Shadow, the Gung Ho. Probably, it's like we always complain about it, so we sound like a broken record. But pretty much anybody you find online talking about these figures are probably going to mention it, because the whole point of these retro cards is to make them more like collectible to people that remember the toys from the 80s that came on packaging like this. They want to keep them in good condition. And so the fact that they pretty much arrive at the store all bent and folded and creased, it's just stupid. And
they should be more like a reaction figure thickness for cardboard.
Or like any other card that comes on a blister toy that comes on a blister card. Like reaction figures have a good solid card. I can't think of what else off the top of my head, but like a Star Wars Black Series, their cards are better quality, like any of them. So, anyway. But yeah, he's cool. He looks good. I wish I did have my other one handy to do a quick side-by-side, but I'll shoot a little side-by-side footage and you guys can see what the difference is. But mainly, I think it's that his armor is blue instead of, I think the original one was more black.
Blackish.
And then they did do a version in between the original and this one, where instead of blue, it was silver. That was like a San Diego Comic-Con one. He came in a bigger box, and he came with multiple extra heads, so you could give him a Duke head or a Storm Shadow head.
Okay.
Because the whole Zartan is supposed to be the master of disguise. But that was a gimmick that never really worked. Because in the cartoon, if he was to go into G.I. Joe headquarters disguised as Duke, they just drew him like Duke. So he looked identical to Duke. And in the cartoon, he even had like, I don't know, it was like a hologram technology where he would like literally just turn into Duke. But yet the toys, even dating back to the very original toy back in like 83 or 84, whatever it was, he came with this little mask. And it's like, he's wearing a very unique outfit with the little crop top and the arm. Like, just because he's got a mustache all of a sudden, nobody's going to be like, who's that guy? So it never really made much sense. And the deluxe figure with the Duke head and the Storm Shadow head, like, I didn't really understand the point of it, because what are you going to do? Put a Storm Shadow head on this and then think it's supposed to be Storm Shadow? It's kind of silly. It doesn't really work. So, I don't need that one, but I'm glad I got this one. So thank you to you and to Elliot for picking this up for me. And yeah, Lady Jaye looks good, although that art is bad.
It's so bad. I was actually looking at the one that I bought recently and comparing it to her. And yeah, I think I like this version better. The one I have is nice, but I just think that green pops more. And
yeah, like I'm not one of these guys that need my G.I. Joe classified figures to be just exact representations of what I had as a kid blown up to a bigger size. I kind of liked how the first wave of G.I. Joe classified, they were taking some chances. Like Duke looked different, Scarlet looked different, but I think the majority of the collectors wanted toys to look just like them. So that's why they didn't go through the trouble of sculpting a whole new Lady Jaye or anything, but they thought if we paint her in the bright green like the old toy, they give her kind of the old school like camcorder, because the newer one had like kind of like a GoPro that attached to her backpack, which is a little more contemporary. But they're like, no, the old one had a camcorder, so we'll give this one a camcorder. So she's a little more throwback to the retro figure. And yeah, I got to admit, I always loved my old Lady Jaye figure when I was a kid. So seeing those old accessories and the bright green, yeah, I kind of dig it. So yeah. Now, this isn't really toy related, but I guess it's sort of. So normally when we film this stuff, we're surrounded by all my toys in this room. And right here, to this side of me, I've got a bookshelf with all my G.I. Joe classifieds on it. So I could easily just go grab my Zartan and my Lady Jaye for comparison.
You can't right now.
Yeah, so we are in Halifax, Nova Scotia. And yeah, where you were in Cape Breton the other day, that's like a 4 hour. It's still in Nova Scotia, but it's like 4 hours from here. Anyway, our province of Nova Scotia is on fire right now. It's like you always hear about those California wildfires and out of control. That's what Nova Scotia is like right now, and that is definitely not the norm.
No, there were at 1.7 active fires in Nova Scotia.
Yeah.
And so far, like in one specific, there's two big fires, one down in the Shelburne area and one in Tantallon. So Tantalon's about 20 minutes away from here, maybe, if that, depends on how fast you drive.
Yeah.
That fire is probably the one that's wreaking the most havoc on our area, because it has all the smoke and the haze and everything, and unfortunately, like 200 plus homes have
200 plus homes have
destroyed,
burnt down to like the foundation.
Poor animals and pets and everything. People weren't home to get the evacuation order, and they had to leave their
my Facebook animals. Like when it's all hit. So today, when we're filming this, it's Wednesday. Is it 30th or 31st?
It's the 31st today.
Yeah, and so this all started like 3 or 4 days ago on Sunday.
Yeah.
And on Monday, my Facebook was just filled with, there was the area where this started. It's a little more rural, like we're in the suburbs here, but there's all these horse stables, and the horse stables had no way to get rid of, like, let the horses. They didn't have trailers, so they were letting the horses out wild.
Yeah,
and then they were just saying like, keep an eye out for horses. We let all these horses run around loose everywhere, which it's just crazy because this doesn't happen here. Sure, we have the odd forest fire, but it's you don't even really think about it. They're usually contained. They're over before you know it. This is not California. It's not like, but this time around, it's been raging for like 4 days. They're still out of control. My phone goes off with the emergency alert. Like every couple of hours, I'm getting an evacuation notice for like, this area has now been asked to evacuate. And technically, we are sitting in an evacuation zone right now. I don't think we're in any immediate danger from any fire, but the smoke and the air quality, depending on which way the wind is blowing, like my whole house smells like hickory barbecue right now. Yeah. And it's pretty scary. So on Sunday night, Sunday was a beautiful day, by the way. Super hot, super sunny.
2 degrees.
Yeah, I was sitting on my deck all day, drinking beers. It was a good day. And then I heard there was a fire that started around 3 p.m. And you're like, okay, well, hopefully they take care of that. Then you started to be able to smell the smoke. And then you could see some smoke in the air. And next thing you know, we're getting an evacuation order saying you need to leave your house. And I was like, okay, I'm sure they're being a little overly cautious. So me and my wife, we just took our cat and our dog, and we went to my in-laws' house. And then we were sitting there for a few hours, and then like another evacuation notice came. And then another evacuation notice came. And I was like, this sounds like it's serious. Like, And then I started thinking, like, should I have grabbed some of my stuff? Like, I'll feel like such an asshole if my house burns to the ground with everything in it and I didn't grab anything because I had ample time to do so. So I was like, I think I'm going to go back to the house. So I went back Sunday night and I took some crates. And this was painful to do because I take care of my stuff.
Yeah.
I've moved a few times, and every time I move, I take every single one of these figures, and I usually wrap them into little foam, and then I put it in its own Ziploc bag, so all of the weapons stay with just that one character, and I pack them very gently. But here I am thinking, I don't have time for this. I'm like, I've got to grab the most important stuff, and I took all these big plastic totes, and I just started going around the room being like, okay, what am I putting in here? What am I putting in here? And I'm just packing it all very haphazardly. Like, it might... I hope nothing broke, but I don't know because I haven't unpacked it yet because they haven't lifted the evacuation order. So yeah, the first night we slept at my in-laws' house. But then we came back the next day and we've been home ever since. But it's still very smoky. The fire is not that far away. We're still getting new evacuation orders for new areas. So it's kind of scary. And I've never been in that position before. People have always asked me, anytime anybody comes in this room, they're always like, what would you do if there was a fire? And I just always joke. I'm like, well, whatever. I'd
go down with the ship. There's not leave.
Yeah, like when it goes, it goes. Like I wouldn't, I wouldn't kill myself losing all these action figures. Yeah. But anyway, here I was. My house was in possible danger of burning down. I seemed to have as much time as I needed. Like, if I wanted to rent a U-Haul, I probably could have cleared up my whole house. Like, but is that an overreaction? And at this point in time, I would say that definitely would have been. I think we're in the clear. Who knows? But, having to come into this room with a tote bin and be like, what am I going to take? That was a weird experience.
Yeah, my collection, so I live literally 2 minutes down the road from you.
Yeah.
My collection is nowhere near the size of yours, but I wasn't in the evacuation area, so I was kind of probably the next one that they would have evacuated. And I was stressing out about how am I going to pack all this stuff up? How am I going to, what do I take? And, it's silly compared to what some of the other people went through with losing their entire houses, but you never know when that's going to happen. And another fire happened last night, which is apparently still on the go with an ammonia leak or something as well. And it's crazy right here. So
it is
big shout out to all the first responders and everyone fighting that, and stay safe, guys.
Yeah, for sure. And the thing, I know that this is all just stuff. And when I was sitting at my in-laws' house thinking, should I have grabbed some stuff? It wasn't necessarily the collectibles that were top of my mind. It was like photo albums, that sort of stuff, important documents. Should I go get my passport and my, I have a whole accordion folder full of all my most important papers and stuff. I should probably get that. Yeah. So I did fill my car with papers and photos and things like that. Our wedding album.
Yeah.
But then, of course, I was here, and I was like, now I got to go see about my collectibles, and I came down here. The first things I grabbed were some of my Hot Toys figures, which are the 12-inch dolls. And I have a weird relationship with those, because they are awesome figures. They're some of my most expensive figures, because Hot Toys are usually starting to $200 to $300 for an average figure. Some of the more deluxe figures can go for $500 to $800. Anyway, the guys I have are probably about $200 to $300 figures. And I have the Crow from my favorite movie, The Crow. I have Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow from G.I. Joe Retaliation. And not only are they cool figures of cool characters...
Emergency alert.
We're getting,
1 second. We're getting right back.
An emergency alert right now. And both of our phones are buzzing. So... where's this one?
Alert for Lower Sackville. Forest fire alert issued.
Indigo Shores. That's what I'm seeing.
Wildfire.
Anyway. That's, this is what it's like. We're just sitting around, watching TV or whatever. Next thing you know, your phones are going off. And it's usually my personal phone, my work phone.
Yeah, any electronic iPads.
Our TV, your big red box comes on your TV screen, and You know what's annoying about that too is it doesn't stop your show. Like, your show is still playing underneath of it. So like I'm fumbling around for the remote. I gotta hit exit to get off the warning, and then I gotta like go back 30 seconds to watch what I missed. Anyway, so yeah, what was I packing? So I grabbed my Hot Toys figures because not only are they cool, but my wife gifted me all 3 of them.
Yeah.
Those guys. So I grabbed those, and then I came in this room, and probably a lot of people would have grabbed like say their vintage GI Joes. Like I have hundreds of like GI Joes from the 80s. But I thought if my house truly did burn down and I didn't have a chance to grab anything, I probably wouldn't put much effort into trying to recollect the 80s figures. I would just say, well, I had them for as long as I did and I'd let it go. They're expensive to find now. They'd all be secondhand. I'd have to hunt them down on eBay one at a time. It would be a nuisance. However, G.I. Joe Classified is probably my favorite collection right now. It's what I'm currently collecting. I have lots of them on current pre-order. So I thought, you know what, if my stuff all burned to the ground, those would be the toys I'd probably be buying again first.
Yeah.
So that's when I thought I should rescue my G.I. Joe Classified figures. So none of them are on display here because I took all of them and I just kind of swept them into a bin. And it's going to be a nightmare because a lot of them have little guns and pistols and knives. And I'm sure those are all going to fall loose into the bin. So I'm going to have to try and figure out who belongs to what and everything.
Which is the first thing I said when I came in the room, by the way. I noticed the Classified figures were all gone. I said,
pretty big glaring hole there.
Were they evacuees? And just so you know, I was willing to come over and help you evacuate Snake Mountain if the need was there.
I did leave Snake Mountain, so that sucks because that is the most expensive collectible I've ever bought.
Yeah.
But it's also very big and kind of fragile. Yeah. I didn't want to just be running around with that. I rescued my behind you. I don't know if you guys watch this show regularly. Usually on this back shelf you see a bunch of mermen.
Yeah, I saw. Oh, there's the poor merman fell.
Yeah. So I grabbed my 2 or 3 versions of Masters of the Universe Classics Merman, and I grabbed my original vintage Merman from the 80s, who was up in the turret of the castle. I also grabbed my Origins versions of Merman, which are over here. I grabbed Classics Mantenna, and I grabbed the Filmation Skeletor and He-Man. There's also an empty shelf here because I grabbed all the movie He-Man figures, like the Dolph Lundgren He-Man, Skeletor. So yeah, I was kind of choosy. Like, I love my Masters of the Universe Classics collection, and probably after G.I. Joe, that's the collection I'd want to save the most. But it's a pretty big collection, and they're pretty bulky figures. I didn't have enough tote bins to kind of pack them all in. Like, I love Marvel Legends. Marvel Legends is probably my fastest growing collection. I have hundreds of them. But I didn't take any Marvel Legends. I was kind of thinking if I really wanted to collect them again, they wouldn't be that difficult to find. Most of them are still relatively readily available. But I have some glass IKEA cabinets in the other room. So I grabbed some random stuff out of there. But yeah, it was freaky as I was grabbing things. I was like, well, I guess I'll take this NECA Phantom, but I'm going to leave, that Super 7 Lion-O behind. And it's just like picking and choosing what was potentially going to burn and which was going to come. It wasn't easy. And for comic books, I have thousands of comic books.
Yeah.
Some of them are valuable. Some of them aren't necessarily valuable, but have like some sentimental value to me, like the first comic book I ever bought and everything. Literally the only one I grabbed because it was easy to get to was the first appearance of Venom in Amazing Spider-Man 300. That's probably the most valuable comic book in my collection, and it was easy. It was on the top row. My boxes are all stacked. So I grabbed it out there, but I also have the first Deadpool, the first Cable, the first first Hobgoblin. There's lots of first appearances, Anyway, you can't be bothered to start picking through everything one at a time. Although it did make me think, like, maybe I should have a box with my
ready to go,
my most precious ones all in one box, so I could just take it in an emergency like that. I don't know. So that's what we've been dealing with. Another thing that I grabbed, and it's weird because I left all my Marvel Legends behind it, but I went and I grabbed all my Pacific Rim figures, and that's not really a current collection. No. That collection's been kind of dormant for a few years, But I really do like those figures, and people... Like, I have a video on my channel where I reviewed Pacific Rim figures, and it is by far my most watched video. And people comment all the time, like, where did you get these? You know, where can I get these? And they don't seem to recognize that the video's from, like, 3.5 years ago or something. I'm like, I don't know where... I bought them at the store then. I don't know where you're going to find them now. But people are always commenting on that video about how these things are so hard to find, they're so expensive. And so I was thinking that, I'm like, you know what? I know for a fact these are going to be hard to reacquire. So I grabbed all my Pacific Rim creatures.
And that video is at what, like over 100,000 views, isn't it?
Almost 200,000. I have my channel currently, as we film this, is just over 400,000 views. I think it's 407,000 views or so in total for all my videos, and I think 195,000 of those are on that one Pacific Rim video. So, yeah, people still to this day, that's my most watched video like every month. So somebody's interested in Pacific Rim figures. Yeah. Okay. So I probably will, like I said, I probably will open these figures and I'll splice in maybe a review with some comparisons. So here's a closer look at Lady Jaye. Now, I did intend to go dig my other version of Lady Jaye out of the box that I kind of threw her in so I could do some side-by-sides. But even though this is a day or two later that I'm filming these insert shots, there are still fires raging around here, and it's still not really safe to unpack stuff. And so I looked at the box that she's in, and I think she's buried way at the bottom, and I really didn't want to dig around and risk damaging anything, because I did lay everything in there kind of layered and kind of carefully. So for me to kind of haphazardly try and dig her out right now is just way more trouble than it's worth. But the main difference, like I said, is the paint job. Like, this one is a bright green that's kind of true to the vintage figure. And you know what? I might actually be able to dig out the vintage figure. I think she might be a little bit more accessible. Okay, so here is my vintage Lady Jaye figure. So you can see here she has a black ball cap that is not removable. It's part of the sculpt. She's got this very bright green outfit on. She has this like green camcorder that straps over her shoulder. She's got this little round kind of backpack, and then she's got this weird long like spear gun, which has got kind of a like a pointy end on both sides there. And in the cartoon, she shot these spears, and she could change the tips. Sometimes they would open up and launch a net. Sometimes they would be explosive. You know, so this is the retro Lady Jaye figure. So with these retro carded figures, they're trying to recreate the look of the vintage toys. So I think they did a pretty good job here. The green, it's still not quite as bright, but it's pretty close. But other than the sculpt, they didn't change anything from the past version of Lady Jaye. So they had the sculpt pretty good right from the get-go. It was just the colors were a lot darker the first go around. Now, her backpack here, you see it's very similar. It's just kind of that small, kind of rounded backpack. I think she had a different backpack in the other release, because as I mentioned, there was kind of like a GoPro camera that plugged into it. This one here doesn't seem to have a hole for a GoPro, so I think it's a different sculpt. And this is a new accessory here, this green camcorder, which is mostly just solid green, but it does have the black like lens on it there. So that's kind of cool. I think the gun is the same as the one that came with the other release. It might be a different color. And the way it works is this piece is actually a spear that can be removed. So you can launch the spear like so. And then she just carries this piece. Now there was one other little spare accessory, which is this, which is I think you can just change the head of your spear essentially. So that one's pointy. This one I guess would look like it would maybe open up into a net or something. But it's nothing that I'm really going to use. It'd be nice if it could be stored on her somewhere, but none of her pouches really accommodate it. She does have a little knife as well, which I have sheathed in her belt. And one thing I wasn't sure about, so the previous release of Lady Jaye, she had, as I mentioned, two different hair options, because the vintage toy had the hat stuck to the figure, but in the cartoon she never wore the hat. So I liked that they gave you the option with the other figure, you could change it out. This one here, they only gave you the one option, so I was kind of wondering if they would glue it in place, but they didn't. The hair still comes off very easily. which I guess is good for people that like this color better, but they want to put on the non-hat hair. But for me personally, since this one doesn't have swappable hair on her own, I'd rather they would have just glued this in place so I wouldn't have to worry about it falling off when I was playing around with her. But not a big deal either way. I could glue it on myself if I really wanted to. But yeah, it's a cool figure. And I think I do like this one better than the first release. So yeah, pretty solid. Now, I was actually able to dig out my previous release of Zartan because he was near the top of the box that I threw him in. So here is the previous release. So you can see it is the exact same figure. They haven't changed anything on the sculpt. And I guess it's up to you which one you like better. Like the original one is a little more darker. You know, it's mostly black. Where this one here, they've changed some of it to blue. Like I said, there was also a silver version, which, you know, some people might prefer that. And I'm not sure. I kind of thought I liked the blue better when I was looking at him by himself because it was a little brighter. Like his skin tone is a little lighter. His hood is a little lighter. Just overall, this figure is brighter than this one. This one is, you know, it's a little more emo, a little more dark and depressing. But what's interesting is, so with the Lady Jaye figure, as I showed you, they took, when they originally released Lady Jaye in the classified line, they tried to make her a little bit more updated with her colors and her accessories. But then with the retro one, they tried to get back to the vintage toy. So I thought I would grab my vintage Zartan figure, and here he is. And I think the original release is closer to this one. And you can see this guy doesn't have his little kind of leg armor on here that plugged in there. But I do have them, and they just look like this too. They were black with a little bit of clear on them. So again, I still think this version, the version 1, looks closer to the vintage. This guy here with the blue, I think, is closer to the animated look. But that's not historically what the retro carded figures have kind of been sold as. It's not really trying to capture the look of the cartoon. If they were, they would have given us the Lady Jaye without the hat. But anyway, regardless, I still think it's a cool figure. Although I opened this one up before I went and dug him out of the packaging, or out of the box. And if I had went and got this guy first and kind of looked at them side by side, I might have actually opted not to open this figure up. Just because I don't think it's really different enough. I don't know. I don't really care that much one way or the other. I don't really like to keep many of my figures carded. It's just where these figures are almost, just duplicates of one another. It's kind of nice just to have one open and one carded. Yeah, from the back, you can see the pants on this guy, again, much brighter. He's got more gray on his boots instead of black. His backpack, where this guy's is solid black and this guy's got that little bit of silver. I don't know if the masks are the same. So there's this guy's mask. And let's see. I think they're pretty much the same, except where the skin tones of Zartans are different. They changed the skin tone of the mask so it would work properly. And just in case you haven't seen that done before, I might as well show you. So it stores in the backpack like that. And then you can just kind of put it over his face like so. Ugh. Anyway, there you go. So there's Zartan with his mask on. I don't think he's fooling anyone. But still, it's kind of a cool throwback right back to the vintage figure. He had the same thing. You could open his backpack. I'm going to probably struggle with this here. And inside there was the little bearded face that could just be slid on over his face. So it's cool that they kept that little play feature. But yeah, anyway, this Zartan is cool, but I think if you have either of the previous releases, it's not really a must-have. Do you have anything else to talk about that you bought? Or?
No, I haven't been able to buy it.
All right, well, I have a couple odds and ends here that maybe I'll talk about.
Sure.
And one of them kind of ties into G.I. Joe Classified. So, I got a couple new Marvel Legends. Mm-hmm. This one here is a Walmart exclusive. This is Starlord.
Yeah.
Now, this is Starlord based on his comic book appearance, and specifically his first appearance in his very early days in the 70s. And I was not familiar with Star-Lord back then. I didn't start collecting comic books until the mid-'80s. And Star-Lord was one of those characters that, like, was dormant. Nobody was really doing anything with him. So he didn't really come back into prominence until, I think it was probably the early 2000s, or maybe whenever Abnett and Lanning relaunched the Guardians of the Galaxy with the whole new cast.
Yeah.
Because Guardians of the Galaxy has been around since like the 70s as well, but it always had a whole different cast of characters than the ones you're familiar with from the movies. And then in around the early 2000s or something, they relaunched Guardians of the Galaxy with characters like Star-Lord, Rocket Raccoon. Those guys had never been associated with Guardians before. Anyway, so that was kind of when I first got to know Star-Lord, and he had a different look at that point in time. And now, in my current Marvel Legends collection, I have 2 Star-Lord figures that look like Chris Pratt.
Yep.
But I really don't want Marvel MCU figures. I'd rather have a comic book Star-Lord. So when they announced this one, I was like, well, cool, it's a comic book Star-Lord, but not the comic book Star-Lord I know or care about. I really didn't feel the need to get this, so I didn't pre-order it when it went up on Walmart's website, because it's Walmart exclusive. Mm-hmm. But I was in Walmart the other day, and I saw him there, and I was like, again, I think I was just kind of jonesing to buy something. And he is a really cool figure.
Yeah.
He's kind of goofy looking, but it works.
Yeah, he's got those kind of like bug eye goggles going on here.
Yeah, I posted him on Instagram, and somebody said he looks like he's one of the Sectars.
Huh, I didn't see that.
Yeah, when I saw him, I'm like, yeah, he's definitely got those Sectar eyes, those big buggy eyes. And he came with a little sword and a pistol. Yeah, it's a cool figure.
Yeah.
And then the other figures I got is there is a new wave of Marvel Legends that just came out. Most of the figures are the Ant-Man Quantumania movie figures.
Yeah.
So there's an Ant-Man, a Wasp, a Kang, I think somebody else. And the Build-A-Figure is Ant-Man's daughter, with the character Stature. But there are a couple of comic book figures in the wave as well. One of them here being Crossfire. So this is kind of an obscure Marvel villain. He's one of these Marvel villains that just shows up in like crowd scenes all the time. Like, there's a bar in the Marvel Universe where all the supervillains hang out called the Bar with No Name.
Yep.
And anytime, like, the Punisher wants to shake down bad guys for information or something, they always go into this bar, and there's always, like, characters like the Brothers Grimm or the Melter or Crosshair. Crossfire. They're always in the background there. So I don't know if I've ever really read a good story with him. Like, he's not a character that I'm particularly passionate about. But at the same time, he pops up a lot, and he's got a cool, unique look to him. You not liking him?
No, I was going to say something smart, but
okay.
He looks like a Swiss Army motto.
Well, listen, he does look like a medic to me.
Yeah.
And like that big white cross on his belt, and like kind of over his eye. It's supposed to be like crosshairs, but like it looks to me like you could almost use this to make a custom Lifeline figure from the G.I. Joe Classified figure. Anyway, I do like he's got this like just a nice subtle stubble on his face and everything. It's a nice little paint detail.
Okay. Yeah.
He came with some extra hands. He came with some blast effects for the end of his rifle, like a smoke effect or like a blast effect. And he also came with like a strap for his gun so you can put it over his shoulder. So yeah, he's not a bad figure for kind of a chumpy character. And then the other one I got was an even lamer villain called Egghead.
Yeah.
Now the thing is, here's his head.
You swapped them
So
out.
Egghead, you probably can't see that right now, but I'll do a close-up later. But Egghead, he's got this cone head shape head. So he looks like cone heads from the Saturday Night Live. And he's just like your typical mad scientist type of villain. But when I saw the figure, because that's a character I could have done without. I'm like, I don't need Egghead in my collection. But he's got this blue pants and a white lab coat. And when I saw the figure, I thought, you know what that could be used for? Is a custom Dr. Venom for my G.I. Joe Classified shelf. Now, I'm not much for customizing. I don't paint my figures. I don't do swap parts. But if it's something as simple as changing somebody's head over, I can do that. So I thought of like the spare heads I had to use, because really anybody with short brown hair could maybe suffice. So if I had like even a Peter Parker or a Jamie Madrox multiple man, those heads might work. But I went with this head here belongs to Dr. Doom when he was the infamous Iron Man for a time. So the infamous Iron Man figure came with a helmeted Iron Man head, but it also came with this unmasked head, and it's just been sitting in my bag of spare parts. And unfortunately, it doesn't really snap in place. Like, I kind of had to use some stick tack to hold it on. And when I posted this, I took a picture of this, and I put it on Instagram, and a couple people commented about how different the skin tone was.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And if you saw the picture, it does look really bad in the picture. His face is really dark tan, and then his neck is really white. But you don't notice it when you're
Well, I'm also colorblind, like partially colorblind, with some shades, and like I
don't notice it.
I have a hard time telling.
Yeah, it is. Where it's his neck, the head casts a little bit of shadow on it. It really doesn't look bad. I think it's just when I took the picture for Instagram and the flash came on, it really shows the stark difference. But are you familiar with Dr. Venom?
He's the guy that was around before Dr. Mindbender, right?
Right. So, like, in the early days of the Marvel comic books in the 80s, when Larry Hama was writing the comic book, there wasn't enough toys. Like, there wasn't enough cast in G.I. Joe for him to fill his stories. So he started creating some characters to fill in some blanks. So, for example, he wanted Cobra Commander to have kind of like a mad scientist character to build experiments. So he created the character of Dr. Venom. Now, a year or two later, Hasbro created the character Dr. Mindbender, who was like a bald guy with a twirly little mustache, to be the mad scientist for Cobra. And he was the guy that was featured in the cartoons and in the comic books. So they killed off Dr. Venom in the comic books because they didn't need him anymore. But he was a very prominent character for those first year or two of G.I. Joe comic books. And so people always had kind of a fondness for him. And he never got a figure in the vintage line. It wasn't until just a few years ago the G.I. Joe Collectors Club made this figure of Dr. Venom. And I haven't opened this guy yet. It's been pinned to my wall because it's kind of such a unique collectible. But you'll see he's got a white lab coat. It's hard to see, but he's got like a necktie under there. And he's got these blue pants. He's just got kind of brown hair slicked back. And I thought it almost looks like it's supposed to be this guy. So yeah, when I saw this body on Egghead, I was like, I'm going to make a Dr. Venom. And because I don't think Hasbro is going to make a Dr. Venom figure in the G.I. Joe line anytime soon. So yeah, that was pretty cool. I was pretty pleased with my...
That's a solid customized job.
Yeah.
Now, when you said Egghead, I immediately went to Batman 66, because they had... Yeah. I was like...
Vincent Price.
Yeah, I was like, that's strange. Mike never collects, like, Batman stuff. And then I clued in. Yeah, Egghead. Yeah.
And unfortunately, even if this had been an Egghead from Batman 66, I couldn't do this because his figures are like an inch taller.
Yeah.
So the scale would have been all off. But this guy actually looks pretty good when you display him next to, like, I did have him on my shelf with my G.I. Joes for a couple of days before the fire started.
He really does look like Dan Aykroyd, though. It's kind of funny.
So let's just take a quick closer look at these Marvel Legends before we move on. So first up is Crosshair. So you couldn't really see this on the wide shot, but as I was telling Chad, he's got, like, it's not really coming up on camera, but he's got this nice little 5 o'clock shadow. I don't know if you can see that. It's all these little speckled stubble on his face, which is pretty cool. But it's a nice head sculpt. And you can see, even though this is a pretty basic body, like they just basically painted all these design elements onto him. He's double jointed at the elbows and the knees. It's a good size body and everything. Proportions are good and all that sort of stuff. I like it. Rifle's pretty cool. I don't know if we've seen that before with any other characters. But like I mentioned, it did come with a blast effect, a smoke effect, and a little strap. But I've already got that stuff tucked away. But he's a pretty cool figure. And he's a unique character. Like, we have never had an action figure of this guy ever. So yeah, very happy to add him to my collection. Now, Egghead, here's a closer look at that Egghead face that you couldn't really see earlier. So it's got lots of nice detail there. I like the clear lenses on the glasses. Like, it's a good head sculpt. And yeah, normally I would have been happy to add Egghead to my collection, if these figures were still like $20-25. But now that these Marvel Legends are closer to $40, I definitely would have skipped Egghead. And essentially, I sort of feel like I did. Like, I'm not going to have an Egghead on display in my collection because I'm going to throw this in my bucket of spare parts, and I'm going to display the figure with my G.I. Joe classified figures. So you can see here that the skin tone is kind of different, and you can also see how the head doesn't really sit very well on the neck joint. You could probably adjust that a little bit so it looks a little better. But from the front, I think he looks pretty good. And like I said, when there's not bright lights glaring on him, the skin tones don't look too bad. Like when I'm looking at him here in hand, I think he looks fine. So yeah, I think he worked out pretty well. And I did grab like a G.I. Joe figure just so for scale. You can see how he fits in there with them pretty well. So no issues there. So yeah, I think he'll look pretty good in my G.I. Joe display. And I'll just bring in that Dr. Venom figure from the G.I. Joe Collectors Club so you can take a quick look at him. So you can see this figure here. He had like a little black necktie, the bright blue pants, and the lab coat. So yeah, I think this figure here does a pretty good job of reproducing it. And lastly, here is Starlord. So even though it's a goofy look, one that I don't really have any like a nostalgic ties to, it's a cool, unique look. Like, he doesn't look like any other superhero in my collection, that's for sure. And just like with Crossfire there, the body is pretty basic. It's probably the same one that's been used on many characters. It might even be the same one that's used on him. But they have added some extra embellishments like the belt and everything to make it seem a little bit more unique to the character. He's got a sword here. He's got a little laser pistol that can be holstered. Yeah, I really like that head sculpt. But the other Star-Lord figure I have here is this Chris Pratt looking one. And even the likeness on that is somewhat questionable. And even though I think Chris Pratt is great as Star-Lord, and I do have an appreciation for like this kind of goofy 70s look, I'm really hoping that we get a kind of contemporary Guardians of the Galaxy. And actually, I shouldn't even say a contemporary look because I don't really care for Star-Lord's current look in the comic books. He's walking around with a full beard and bare-chested. It's not really my thing. I would rather the Abnett and Lanning version of Star-Lord with the cool helmet and everything. So hopefully we get one of those sometime soon. And so the one other thing I guess I was going to talk about today is I got another G.I. Joe reaction figure. So this is the Ninja Viper.
Where'd he come from?
So, and this figure is just Storm Shadow painted blue. Yeah. They've already done this a couple of times. Not only do I have Storm Shadow, who's white, they painted him red to make the red Ninja, and then they painted him black to give us Ninja Coup, and which was a foreign repaint back in the day. Anyway, the Ninja Viper was a character that appeared in the vintage G.I. Joe line, and it was just a repaint of Storm Shadow in blue. So there is some precedent for this character. Anyway, this is a Target exclusive. Can't get them in Canada where we are. So my brother, who's down in Miami, he buys these things for me when he has the chance. And my sister Angie was just down in Miami visiting him, and he gave her this to bring back to me. So I just got this the other day when Angie came home. And so yeah, he's pretty cool. I will open him up, but for now he's still carded. Yeah, he's pretty fun.
I like my ninjas, so he would be a buy for me if I ever saw him around.
Now, speaking of G.I. Joe reaction figures, they've got 2 waves up for pre-order right now. But with a lot of the reaction figures, you get the names first, but they don't show you they don't show you images. So there was a wave that went up for pre-order, I don't know, 2 months ago or something, and it said all these characters in Python Patrol and Tiger Force repaint colors. So I ordered them sight unseen, and now there's another wave that I ordered sight unseen, but they have revealed what the new Tiger Force and Python Patrol figures look like. Just as of today, they went up for sale. Like, they're in stock on Super 7's website. But I pre-ordered mine from Big Bad Toy Store, so it'll probably be another couple of weeks before Big Bad gets them in stock. And then it will take another month for them to mail them to me.
Assuming we don't get stuck in customs again.
Yeah, I have a package from Big Bad Toy Store. Now, I was going on vacation a couple of weeks ago, almost like a month ago now. Yeah. And I was like, maybe I'll say ship my loot now, so that by the time I get back from vacation, it'll probably be here waiting for me. Anyway, so I went to Montreal, and then I went to the Dominican Republic, came back, still no movement on the package. And then on May 14th, it finally it crossed the border, and it said this is with Canada. It's it's being reviewed by customs before they release it. That happens all the time when I buy toys from the States, but usually customs releases it within a day or two. So on the 14th, it was there, and it said it's with customs. You'll have it in your hands in 1 to 12 days. I was like, okay. And then 12 days went by, no updates. It still just says May 14th with customs. So on like the 28th, I called customs, and I was like, what's going on with this thing? And they're like, you have to wait at least 15 business days before we even look at it, so wait longer. And I was like, all right. Anyway, just today, it finally updated. It said it cleared through customs, but it told me that I'm going to owe $48 when it arrives at the door. That's how much they decided to charge me in customs charges. But they didn't give me a date for when it was going to arrive.
Yeah.
Instead of saying 1 to 12 days, it changed to say delivery between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. But it didn't say a day. So I'm like, oh, I don't know. It'll probably take at least a week. But anyway, that's part of the reason why I've been a little itchy with buying toys, because I thought, well, that package would have arrived like 2 weeks ago and that would have scratched the itch. But I've had these toys that I'm waiting on, and nothing new coming in.
That's like my Flint toy. I was expecting the same thing because I was going through a period where I needed to get something, and he was in stock on the Walmart website, shipped from Ontario, which is a couple provinces over.
Yeah,
still not here, and it's been 45 days.
Yeah,
and it just says delayed and doesn't give any details. And I tried contacting Walmart, and they said the same thing. We don't have an answer for you. I'm like,
yeah, that's weird, because like if it's coming from Ontario, there's no reason for it to be. It's not going to go through customs or anything. So I don't know what to tell you there. But anyway, so the reaction figures, the Python Patrol and the Tiger Force, they're pretty fun. Like some characters like Duke, he's had a Tiger Force look since the 80s.
Yeah.
And in the classified, they've repainted the original Duke into his Tiger Force color, so that's kind of expected. So when I saw the Reaction Force Duke, of course, it looks like Duke in his standard Tiger Force colors. But some of the other ones that they pre-ordered, it was Tiger Force Snake Eyes, who's never had a Tiger Force figure before. Tiger Force Scarlet, who's never had a Tiger Force figure. Tiger Force G.I. Joe Trooper, which is like the generic Trooper. He's never had a Tiger Force. And then it was Cobra Commander Python Patrol, which has never been done. Baroness Python Patrol and Destro Python Patrol. And then it was a Bat Python Patrol, which we got in the classified line. So I had no idea kind of how they were going to present these. I was like, is Snake Eyes going to be like orange with stripes? Or like, I don't know how they're going to present them. Anyway, so they revealed them today. I'll plop a picture in here. But they look pretty fun. Like, they're not for everybody. Some people are going to think they're goofy and dumb. But yeah, Snake Eyes is just a full body yellow Snake Eyes with like black stripes. I'm looking forward to them. I like silly repaints. So I wish they were cheaper. But they're fun. Why don't we wrap this up? I think we've talked about it enough. We're going long. Yeah. We're going long. Okay, so why don't you sign us out of here? All right, so thanks for watching, guys. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Leave us comments. We enjoy interacting with you. And yeah, until next time, keep collecting. Ciao.